I don't believe that there's actually a lack of diversity, more so than there's a lack of coverage. I think that, yes, there are more cosplayers of color now, but I think that they get a lot less coverage. When you look at magazines, when you look at websites, you still kind of see what has been normalized as the face of cosplay. And I think events like the Black Geeks photo shoot, here I noticed they had a POC color shoot that they had a shoot this year. Those are the things that are going to normalize faces that look like ours for everyone else.
I mean, and keep in mind, even if you like just go on the con floor, right, and you just go out here and just look around, there's tons of brown faces out there that, like, normally if you just go online, you're not gonna see that. Like, share pages and that kind of thing for cosplay specifically don't really focus on us. They'll have like their token 5 people that they'll continuously share to make it seem like they're diverse. To be like, oh look, brown cosplayers, but there's a lot more of us, and like she said, we just don't get the same amount of recognition. Like we don't have the same diversity in terms of like the actual people that they choose as other ones, because there's plenty of white cosplayers, there's plenty of Asian cosplayers, and you see a lot of them, and there's tons of them that have huge followings and that kind of thing. It's a lot harder for us because there's only a handful of like bigger brown cosplayers. There's really not that many of us, and yeah, so that's where the discrepancy is, but that comes from people not, wanting to put our faces out there. So.
Right, because even like I think the last 2 years, the Black Geek shoot has actually drawn more press coverage from other outlets. Prior to that, it was mostly black fans that were showing up to that shoot. And so lately there's been, some other social followers and stuff like that, people that have big brands that have come out and done photography, and I think that's great. Events like 28 Days of Black Cosplay, that has really, that has really elevated the visibility of people that are out here. Out here in these cosplay streets.
Yeah.
These rough and dangerous cosplay streets. I'll be honest. I have, I think, a very different approach. Like, I'm terrible at social, and I know this. I did get an intern for the summer, so I'm trying to fix that. But I didn't, I kind of have this weird fan base that I'm kind of like, where y'all come from? So it's kind of been, I think, a little, I don't really know your story, but it's kind of been unintentional for me.
That's unintentional too.
Is it? Yeah.
I don't know, like the idea of going like viral and that kind of thing, there's no exact science to it.
Yeah.
I post something and then, like literally my very first post, like I did a random like work in progress Supergirl photo back in the day when I only had like 600 followers. And then I checked it 2 hours later after I posted it and I had like 5,000 likes. And I was like, where did you people come from?
And I remember the Supergirl. I remember the Supergirl because I remember everybody was going, who's that?
Yeah, I don't know. I genuinely don't know where people come from, and it's I don't necessarily think it pulls me away. If anything, I'm happy that I'm in the position that I'm in because it gives me a voice to be able to like showcase people who are smaller than me and like talk about, hey, there's a lack of diversity here. Y'all are saying, oh, I haven't seen a black girl do this. Actually, no, you're wrong. I'm not the first. There's other ones. I'm just the first person that has followed that you've seen like do it.
Right.
There's plenty of other people. So if anything, it helps me kind of elevate other people, and I'm happy that I've been able to do that. I personally don't know how I've gotten this many followers. I've been very blessed, and then as time has gone on, I've been able to establish relationships with other bigger cosplayers that aren't black cosplayers, and by them also being able to kind of help share me and elevate me too. It's been able to bring me further up and have a bigger voice.
I want to take this underground thing international, but I think I've kind of gathered my fan base just from people that I've met. I'm friends with a lot of other black makers, and so we try to help each other out, and it's just been kind of a word of mouth thing, and I'm trying to get better about putting stuff out there on social because I realize that it's important to reach a larger segment of the population, so I'm working on that.
So for me, it was funny because I didn't know cons and all that were a thing, and then got to college, and my current husband, then boyfriend, was like, "Hey, you like all these nerdy things? You should go to a con." I'm like, "What is that?" So we were walking through campus one day. Actually, this is a great story because we went to Georgia Tech, right? Momocon started at Georgia Tech, and it was funny because we were walking through campus one day, and this was after he had told me about cons, because AWA had come before, so he had gone to a con and brought me like a Naruto kunai knife back, and I was like, oh, you can buy these, what? So I had already known about them a little bit by that point, but I didn't get a chance to go to AWA. And then we were walking through campus one day, and we went through the student center, and Momocon was happening. And I was like, what is this? Where are these people in costumes, all this nerdy? I love it. This is great. He's like, this is a con. So from there, just kind of like slowly having that experience, being like, okay, this is really cool. People make costumes, what? And I'm an artist. I'm a concept artist. That's my day job. So at the time, I was like, okay, I want another way to be able to be creative that isn't drawing. So yeah, from that point, that was like once I stuck my foot in and experienced what it was, I was like, oh, that's it. Then I have all the inspiration I need to start buying things and making stuff.
Yeah, it's weird. I'm a little bit older, so I've been cosplaying since back when we called it just wearing costume. And back then, I only did fabric stuff, and I went to grad school, and that kind of made me take like a break. And when I came back, I felt like I was skewing a bit too old to be involved in that way, and so I stopped for a couple of years. And I went to cons, and I really having a good time. I was like, well, everybody's got on costume. I'm not doing it. And then Pacific Rim came out, and I wanted to drive suit, and I couldn't find a commissioner. And the last guy that I talked to was kind of rude about it, and he's like, well, why don't you do it yourself? And I was like, well, how does one go about doing that myself? I don't know how to make armor. He's like, oh, you just look at YouTube. And I had never really paid any attention to YouTube, because when it came out, it was really kind of a place for old TV shows and retired commercials. And I thought that was what was still over there. I had no idea that people were creating original content. So I go over to YouTube, and indeed, you can put in pretty much how to ... on anything, and there's some guy on YouTube that's happy to help you from, his basement. So I went on YouTube, and I was like, okay, well, I'll try my hand at this. And so I did get the drive suit that I wanted. I wore it to Dragon Con, and a lot of people walked up to me because the film wasn't that great for a lot of people. I loved it. It's still my fandom. And people walked up and were like, this is awesome. What is it? And that's pretty much been my career at this point, because I do a lot of obscure stuff, and people like that. And I try to do the best job that I can, and so I really got into the armor building, and that's just kind of been a thing. And so I just kind of carried on, and now we've got so many properties. When I first started going to cons, like back in the 90s, you'd be excited because you heard that there's going to be a film in about 3 years. I heard that there's going to be a Star Trek film coming out. I heard, and you read it in a magazine. There was no internet. There wasn't Facebook like there is now. And so now there is just so much to use for source material that if it's something that you're into, you can stay busy all the time, whether you're creating for self or doing commissions. And so, yeah, it's easy to stay inspired and stay working. That would be everything that I ever made in the history of ever. No, I was fortunate. I grew up in a really artistic household. Both of my parents do art in different ways. My father did woodworking. He still does custom stained glass. And my mom is like a multimedia artist. She paints, she sculpts, she does jewelry, she does a bunch of stuff. So I always grew up in a house where we were always crafting something. And so I've always, even when I wasn't doing costuming, I make lanterns, I do clay stuff. I was always busy that way. So it's just kind of another outlet for me. At this point, it's just another way of expressing myself. And everything that I work on, I get to a point where I'm like, I really want to start over, but there's a due date, so I can't do that. And I always joke with people, still cosplay about it if you want, because there's definitely DNA on it. I probably bled on it, I definitely cried on it. So do whatever you want to do. But yeah, I feel like that way about all of them, because you get to a point where you're wanting to make it perfect. And I've yet to make something perfect. I would probably fall before that happens. But.
For me, it's just pure passion. Like I said before, I am a concept artist, so art has been something I've literally been doing from the time I could pick up a crayon and draw something. And for me, cosplay, I actually like it a lot too, because since I draw all day, every day, like I'm in my office 9 hours a day, because I work for high res, and so I'm constantly doing concepts. So when I get home, I kind of don't feel like drawing anymore, because I've been staring at a screen all day. So cosplay is a way for me to work with my hands and actually, still build something. I always have moments in the middle of a costume where I'm just like, oh God, why? Why am I doing this? But then I finish it and I'm like, oh, this is great. So it's more of like me focusing on that end goal that drives me forward. I do have moments though where I obviously need to take breaks. I get tired because if you're constantly working on something, you never have time for yourself. So I make sure to try to do that just because if I don't, I would get burnt out. And I try not to do con crunches in the same way some other people do, where they're like, it's a week before the con, and they're like, oh yeah, I need to make this.
Yeah,
I'm not doing it.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
I can't do that. I don't have the time. I don't have the energy. I respect people that can actually finish a costume that quickly. I cannot. I have to plan at least a couple months ahead of time, or else I'm not.
Oh, I was planning.
But yeah, start it. You gotta start.
I know you gotta start. My mom's always the other thing. She's like, you know, you spend way too much time in your head. But once I'm done in my head, I immediately sit down. I'm like, okay, and now we shall work. But yeah.
It takes so because I can't. Much respect to you, I can't do it. I'm not fast enough.
I wish I were you.
Counts as professional.
Right, or else I don't consider myself a professional.
I don't know, like, cause people throw around that word professional cosplayer, and I really wonder, it's like, what do you mean by that? Cause me, for instance, cosplay is still a hobby. I'm guessing here, but like, this isn't something I have a day job.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I guess when I dispense with my day job and, you know, building and for myself and for other people is what's paying the rent at my studio and my house, then okay. I guess I will call myself a professional. Right now, I would say that I am a deeply involved enthusiast.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good term.
Yeah.
Because I know for me, I even, like, for instance, if you enter a cosplay contest, to be in different categories, like you have novice, and if you have won a couple, then you go to journeyman, and then you'll go to master, so on and so forth. I have only been in 2 cosplay contests in my entire life. And I feel like if I entered as a novice now, people will look at me sideways.
I've never entered one at all because it would be like, what are you doing? But I've never been in one, and it's like now, I don't want to like jump right in at, you know, the super pro level because you can't, because they're like, well, you know, you gotta have one of these many to do the grand champion.
You don't have credentials.
Right, so it's like, okay, well.
It's weird.
Isn't it?
Weird. Yeah, it's very strange for me because I feel like I technically count as a novice, but if if I entered a contest as a novice, all the side, I don't even want to get with that drama, even though it's technically I am one.
Exactly
so,
true. Yeah.
It's really weird. So yeah, I don't know. People throw around that word professional, and I don't know if there's a true definition for that, or like, can you be a professional one unless you're paying all your bills or most of your bills with it. Like I get.
I mean, and there are people that are. There are definitely people that, you know, they've got these super brands that are out there.
Not many, though.
Yeah, right.
People make it seem like it's way more out there, especially because a lot of people don't talk about is that a lot of those people who are professional cosplayers have spouses who still have full-time jobs and work and contribute.
Right. I was gonna say, off the top of my head, Kamui Cosplay is the only one that I know that both she and her spouse are fully supported by her cosplay work, and he basically works for her. He's basically an employee of her brand.
Yeah, but there's not a whole lot of people that can do that unless you're like a prop studio. There's some people who are prop studios and specifically make props, but they're not professional cosplayers. They're like prop makers, so it's like different.
And I'm kind of, I don't know, I don't really consider myself a cosplayer, because I'll be honest, my passion comes from making the costumes. I wear them kind of as just a tertiary benefit, and at this point, the last couple of cons I actually didn't wear one.
I like wearing it.
Yeah. Kim is not going to see this interview. You don't have to worry about that heat. Well, you know, I mean, it's what it is.
Sexy cosplay is still cosplay. Everybody is allowed to do whatever they want in terms of like how they want to put themselves out there. I personally am not comfortable with it.
But you know, I think your cosplay is sexy though.
Sexy in a different kind of way. It's not lewd. I don't do lewd because I have a lot of personal reasons why. I know my husband wouldn't like that either. And that's me. You know, I've established those personal boundaries for myself and what I want to put out there on social media. But I also respect everybody else's autonomy, and they're allowed to, like, if that's how they want to do and that's how they want to get their bag, then get your bag, sis. Because I still like looking at lewd cosplayers like everybody else. Just because I'm not doing it doesn't mean I don't enjoy it. So it is what it is. Everybody has their own personal, approach to it. I personally take a lot of pride in being able to really just make the costume. So for me, it's not about just appearing sexy and that kind of thing. For a lot of it, it really is craftsmanship. And I, like, for instance, my Captain Marvel, I cried over that costume, but I was really proud of myself when I was able to finish because of just the pure amount of work and effort that goes into it.
It
So
looks really great.
thank you. Yeah, it's all about, you know, why you're cosplaying and what you get out of it. So some people, for them, it's more so about, like, either attention or being able to, like, you know, make money or that kind of thing. And I respect those girls, and that's awesome, because I think, you know, sex workers and all that should be supported. But that's just not my personal. No, it's a real thing, but that's just not.
Yeah,
my,
no, absolutely.
But it's just for me personally. I'm uncomfortable with that, and I stick to my comfort zone.
Good on you.
Inspired to do is hard because I have a ton, like I have a list that I have not touched yet. So I don't know if I have one specific one that I aspire to do. I know my favorite one that I have done so far is my Captain Marvel one, just because it was a whole set of challenges for me. Well, one, because Marvel's the one, like, they were the ones that contacted me to make it, so I was like, oh my God, it's Marvel. When Marvel calls, you answer. So,
Yeah, they're funny because I did the Dora Milaje for them last January, and so they call you and you're like, I'm sitting down on the phone, I'm like, okay, but why are they calling me?
because they make you sign that NDA, and you're like, wait, what?
Right. It completely sidelined my entire life because people are like, why aren't you streaming? And I'm like, well, I got this NDA thing, and so yeah, I'll be with y'all shortly.
Yeah, because I was working on something before they called, and then they called. I was like, well, guess this is my life now.
Yeah. Well, it was funny because I had to tell them, I was like, well, you know, you're asking me to do this, but I got to be upfront and tell you that I already had a commission for something else from Black Panther, and I don't want you thinking that anything that you're providing me for this, I'm using for that, and I'm not. But it, you know, here's my materials. I already got it for this other thing. But yeah, it's kind of weird when you get those calls because you're like, well, why are these people calling me? But later we saw other set photos, and we were like, we didn't get these photos.
I know.
Why didn't no one give us these
It was
photos?
the same because they give you the photos and they're not as high quality. Hey, anyway, look, before this is getting off topic. Yeah, that was my favorite because for me, it was a set of challenges that I had never faced before because I had never worked with leather. And I was working on this project with two other girls, Sharon Rose Cosplay and Pitchfork Cosplay, and they had used leather before, so they were like, this looks like leather, we're gonna make it out of leather. And we all had to make the costume out of the same material, so I was like, okay. So, had to make a whole complicated superhero suit from leather for the first time.
Did you have to buy another machine?
I did. I tried using mine, and then it broke halfway through.
Got hot, started smelling funny?
It just stopped working, and I had 2 more weeks to finish that costume, and I was like, well, yeah, I gotta buy this machine real quick because I don't have time to get this fixed and whatnot. So yeah, but once I finished though, I definitely had a new appreciation.
But it looks amazing. It really does. I saw it yesterday and I was like, wow. Wow.
Yeah, so that was definitely my favorite.
Probably the favorite one I've done to date. I mean, the Dora Milaje project was awesome, and I did that one with Dean's List, and he did all the soft parts, and I did all the armor parts and the jewelry and whatnot. And probably the other one that I've gotten the most satisfaction out of is M'Baku, and actually I did a magic wheelchair back in October, which is where you basically make a costume for a disabled child's wheelchair that they can wear out trick-or-treating. And we had 2 kids. I did it with Decatur Makers, and one kid wanted to be the zombie bus from Call of Duty. And so we turned his wheelchair into the bus, and it required a lot of engineering. I was glad there were some engineering folks in-house that could help us figure out how we were gonna make a 6-foot bus made out of insulation foam and a bunch of other stuff turn a corner. But we also dressed him up. He was a zombie bus driver that, you know, hollers out all those really cool things in the game. And probably that was the one that gave me the most satisfaction. Just because he was just over the moon, you know. And it was the first time I worked with a whole, like a really big team of people. I think there were probably maybe 12, 15 people coming in and out of that project. And technically, it is a cosplay. It's a cosplay for a piece of equipment, a piece of mobility equipment. But it was, you know, I got a lot of satisfaction out of that. And M'Baku, I did an M'Baku for a client for Dragon Con last year. And just the detail level on that, I hadn't done anything that was quite that detailed before. And I hadn't done armor that needed to look like a natural product. So that was neat. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out, in Wakanda, it's made from this magical wood. And I was like, okay, but what does this magical wood look like? And there were lots of good photos of that costume. So that came out really great, and that was probably my big shining moment. As far as for myself, I still want to do Holly from Halo. So yeah, there's a guy out there, hey John Bass, he's been on me forever. He's like, there's not enough black Spartans out there, and he doesn't know a single black female Spartan. So if I can get it together, John, I promise it's gonna happen. I am by my very nature not an extrovert. I am to an extent with people that I know. So me having a table at something like this, and I can tell, I know who walks up to me at my table. And I know back when I was trying to find people to ask questions of, it can be a very different experience when you are dealing with someone that looks like you versus someone who does not. So I've tried to definitely put myself out there, as well as take more invites when people ask me to come out. I started streaming on Twitch. If you stream on Twitch, you know what can happen when you look like me and you're on Twitch. I've made up my mind that I'm just gonna have to suck it up and deal, because I think it's important for people to see that I'm doing it, for people to be able to engage. I love coming out to cons like this because I get a lot of people. I get a lot of women that come up to me. I get a lot of people of color that come up to me. They spend a lot of time. I feel like it makes them a little bit more comfortable to ask questions sometimes. So yeah, I try to do my part. As far as events, I do a lot of stuff with Buttercup's team. They have a girls camp, so I go out and I do that. And we talk about lighting your cosplay and stuff like that. And yeah, whenever somebody comes to me, I'm not one of these people. One of the things I found to be the biggest struggle when I was trying to learn is that I would walk up to people and I would say, hey, how did you make your so-and-so? And they'd be very dismissive. Oh, it's 3D print. Oh, it's a blah, blah, blah. And there's a bit, that bold print period at the end of that sentence. And I'm happy to share anything that I know with anybody. Even when you walk up to me and you say, hey, do you take commissions? I'm always going to ask you, yeah, have you tried to build it yourself? Most people are like, I don't know how. And I'm like, well, there was a point where I didn't know how either. So yeah, I just try to share what I'm doing, and I'm happy to teach. I'm happy to show up at anything. So if you want to invite me out, here I am. Happy to do it.
For me, I am slowly learning and trying to be better about, in terms of like sharing people, and like sharing other people who like look like me, and being a little bit more vocal. I've only recently started getting convention invites and that kind of thing, because for the longest it's like I'm literally here as like this individual person, so it's kind of weird when people start saying, oh, you have a voice, oh, I look up to you, oh, that kind of stuff. And I'm kind of like, what? No, I'm just over here trying to just do this and then do my job and go, I'm not. So I've only recently been trying to like kind of step fully into that role in terms of being like, okay, there's somewhat of a responsibility now to be able to do and say things. So being able kind of like you said, having a table. So this is like I think I've only had a table twice now. This is the second time I've ever had a table. And
this was my first table, technically. I've done a lot of panels, but it's my first table, yeah.
Yeah, like I really don't, this is a new experience. So it's been really interesting having people come up to you. Like I've had people cry, like legit start crying. They're just like, okay, like you're such an inspiration, like, because we don't see a lot of people like you on a like larger platform. So you being able to be here and like people see you and stuff, that in itself is already like saying a lot. So that plus, like again, like you said, people asking questions, because I don't see the point in holding on to that now. Like
right.
I had to learn from somewhere. Somebody had to tell me. It's not and like I just know this.
Me telling you isn't going to prevent me from doing it again later. And learning more and doing it better the next time,
Exactly, because you learn, ultimately, like you learn from like obviously watching videos, talking to people and asking questions, and then just doing it and practicing. Because I definitely wasn't as good like a couple years ago at Armor as I am now. So being able to share, like anytime people have like questions on like, hey, what did you use for this? Like, how did you put the lights in this? What did you, like, I try my best to, be as thorough as I can when I answer questions. I can't answer everyone because I get a lot. My inbox is very, very crowded, so I can't respond to everything. But I try my best to be as open as possible. I do eventually want to be able to do more events. The only reason why I don't do as many cons as I would like to is because I only have so many PTO days, and Again,
I have,
day job.
yeah, day job. I have 2 PTO days left this year. And my employer is actually very generous with my PTO days. And of all the days that I'm going to take this year, I think 3 of them are actually personal days for myself and my family. And that can be hard because your family's looking at you like, well, we all want to take a week and go to such and such. And you're like, yeah, I've used all my PTO days for these 6 cons. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
You know?
and I think it's hard because some people need to understand too that we are real people and we have lives outside of cosplay and that kind of thing. So it can be hard trying to balance and schedule like real life versus career versus like cosplay or prop stuff, all that too. So I'm still figuring it out. I'm trying my best though to again do interviews like this, for instance, and be open. And I've talked to a number of like publications and stuff, like being able to do, for instance, last year I did a project with Sci-Fi, like just talking about fan creators. And when they were talking to me, you know, I was talking to them about how like it really is difficult, like trying to make a name for yourself just as a Black woman doing cosplay. Like people don't want to, you know, see us people say, oh, you're appropriating white culture when you dress up as our characters and stuff, and you have to deal with that on top of being a woman, so you're also going to deal with all the sexist trash everybody else deals with too.
I was laughing yesterday because I have an empty chair sitting next to me in my booth. I've got some booth helpers, but if I'm in my booth, I tell them, you know, you guys go out and enjoy the con that I'm not seeing because I'm in my booth. And a friend of mine came by and he needed to do some work on his laptop, and I said, oh, go ahead and sit there. And I was like, and wait for it. So as soon as he sat down, like the next 8 people in a row were like talking to him, and I'm like, I'm over here. He's using electricity.
No, because like I've had people, like I've been at a con, and my husband's always with me because he functions as like my handler, right? So for years, like before people knew who I was, it was a situation where they would walk up and they would go to him and be like, did you make this? I'm the one wearing it. I'm the one that spent all this time in my garage doing so. I was like, but did you make it? He's like, I don't make things. That's right. So
I always tell people I use the royal we, but I'm actually referring to me.
No, it's frustrating too because I've like seen my, like, for instance, my Captain Marvel stuff going around, and people refuse to think that I made it. People thought I bought it. People thought I commissioned it. I'm like, here's the Marvel video.
I actually had somebody that slid into my DMs and said, I don't see you posting a lot of your actual process.
Yeah, so people are dumb, and I'm trying my best to be very vocal when I see people being dumb, and be like, yo, we're out here, we're doing it, we exist.
Here I am, see all the foam dust all over me. And that's the other part. I don't post a lot of the pictures because it's a dirty process.
Same. I don't like posting where it's like, you're not going to get anything like pleasant out of this. It's not pretty. It's not.
I've got fabric scrap everywhere. There's glue on everything.
Then you're going to say my house is dirty. And then I'm
Right. Now you're going to be like, how do you work up in there? It's nasty up in there.